when you're able to profess and manifest that through your pen, like he wrote his death before his death happened.
Tupac may have died in 1996, but his secrets refused to die with him. Crumpled papers, ripped notebooks, and messy scribbles sat untouched for decades, looking like random ramblings to anyone who didn't know better. But when someone finally took a closer look, they found something wild: patterns, codes, and hidden warnings buried in plain sight. These notes showed a side of Tupac the world had never seen before, a man who sensed danger, who saw chaos coming, and chose to record everything in silence. What was he trying to say without saying it, and who was he really warning? The mystery runs deep, and every word he wrote feels like a clue screaming to be heard. Years after that tragic September night in 1996, when Tupac Shakur lost his life, the truth he left behind started to whisper again. Everyone thought they knew his story, the albums, the interviews, the films, the endless documentaries, but none of that told the full truth. The real story lived inside pages he never meant for the public to see. These weren't studio lyrics or poems crafted for fame. They were raw thoughts, scraps of emotion, written in his own hand and hidden away in boxes that sat untouched for years. Some notes were folded tight like secrets he couldn't share, while others were wrinkled, stained with coffee, or torn at the edges like they'd been through battles of their own. He wrote on anything he could find: old receipts, hotel stationery, scraps of paper from long nights on the road. To outsiders, it all looked like trash, but to those who finally saw the bigger picture, every scribble carried meaning, rhythm, and warning. For years, these pages passed quietly between private hands, some guarded by family, others kept by close friends, and a few forgotten inside dusty storage units until someone missed a payment and everything got auctioned off to strangers. Nobody realized what they were looking at. To most, the papers looked messy, random, just the scraps of a busy artist lost in thought. But Tupac was never careless. He was always writing, on planes, in cars, in studios, and deep into sleepless nights. Every word meant something. Every page was a piece of the man behind the legend. Tupac's mind moved faster than his pen ever could. He packed entire notebooks and loose pages with words that spilled out like a storm, lines that started strong but cut off halfway, thoughts that jumped from one idea to another, and symbols scattered all over the place. Random letters, numbers, and phrases repeated again and again with no clear reason. To anyone else, it looked like a mess, but that's exactly what he wanted it to look like. To the casual eye, it seemed like chaos, like the scribbles of a restless genius who couldn't sit still long enough to finish a thought. But that was the disguise. Tupac made it look confusing on purpose, knowing people would glance once, shrug, and think it meant nothing. For decades, that's exactly what happened, until someone finally took a deeper look and realized there was something much bigger hiding inside those pages. A small team of devoted fans and researchers, people who had spent years studying Tupac's life and lyrics, started piecing everything together. They hunted down every scrap of paper with his handwriting, scanned them, compared notes, and laid the pages side by side like puzzle pieces. At first, it seemed hopeless. The handwriting was too messy, the pages too disconnected. But then something wild started to happen. Patterns began to appear. Certain words kept showing up across different notebooks. Symbols matched between pages written months apart. Even the spacing between lines seemed intentional, like a secret rhythm only he understood. The mess wasn't mess. It was a map, a hidden design disguised as chaos. And after decades of being overlooked, someone finally cracked open the truth, and what they found left everyone stunned. Those notes didn't survive because someone planned it. They survived by pure luck. When Tupac passed, his belongings were scattered, split among family, close friends, and old business partners. Some people preserved their pieces carefully, others packed them into boxes and forgot, and a few pages just vanished completely, sold, lost, or misplaced in the chaos that followed his death.
I want to talk about your relationship with Tupac.
Tupac?
Yeah.
Tupac was, well, he was like a Roman general. He took himself real serious.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? He had like a great deal of self-respect and dignity.
Right.
And a lot of people, especially at the time, they couldn't understand that.
Tell me.
Nobody had the full picture of what he left behind. One cousin held a notebook from 1994. A former girlfriend had letters he wrote from prison. A studio engineer still had scraps of paper covered in his handwriting from late-night sessions. Each person held a piece of the story, guarding it like gold, without realizing that together, those fragments formed the secret message Tupac never got to share with the world. For years, the fragments of Tupac's mind were scattered across the country like lost treasure. Some pages sat buried in dusty attics out in California, others tucked away in New York closets, and a few ended up in the hands of random collectors who had no clue what they were really holding. Then, in the early 2000s, a small but determined group of fans and researchers decided to take on an impossible mission: to gather everything Tupac had ever written. They chased every lead they could find. They reached out to family members, old friends, even ex-business partners. They dug through auction listings, private collections, and backroom deals, hunting for every scrap of paper with Tupac's handwriting on it. Piece by piece, clue by clue, they started bringing the puzzle back together. But it wasn't easy. Some people refused to part with what they had, others demanded ridiculous prices, and a few claimed their pages were long gone or denied ever having them at all. Still, the team didn't stop. They kept traveling from city to city, spending their own money, calling in favors, begging, bargaining, doing whatever it took. They refused to let Tupac's words fade into history. And finally, after years of digging, they had enough to spread across an entire room. Hundreds of pages. Some were full notebooks packed with writing, others just single sheets covered corner to corner in his signature handwriting. There were napkins scribbled with quick thoughts, envelopes marked with strange symbols, hotel notepads filled with half-finished ideas. It was like walking straight into the mind of a man who never stopped thinking. The collection was massive and messy. At first glance, it was overwhelming, pure chaos on paper. The team tried reading everything in order, but there was no order. They tried organizing by date, but most pages had none. They tried sorting by topic, but halfway through a page, the subject would change without warning, like his thoughts were moving faster than time itself. Nothing lined up, nothing fit, and nothing made sense, at least not yet. Even with all the pages finally reunited, they still couldn't decode them. But deep down, they felt something hiding inside those words. The repetition of certain phrases, the way symbols reappeared years apart, the rhythm between the lines. It wasn't random at all. Something was there, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the world to finally see what Tupac had been trying to say all along. The way Tupac underlined certain words and circled others, it wasn't random at all. It couldn't be. Every mark, every symbol had a purpose, and the team just had to figure out how to see what he was really saying. What looked like chaos at first glance was actually something deeper, a kind of order hiding inside the madness. Anyone flipping through those pages would have thought Tupac was just scribbling whatever came to mind. Half-thoughts, broken lines, and quick notes that never fully formed. Whole sentences were crossed out, paragraphs slashed through with ink, and clusters of repeated words filled the margins with no clear reason. Letters sat alone on the edges of pages, numbers scribbled in corners, and some sentences started with power, only to fade into silence halfway through. It looked wild, like a mind moving faster than the pen could keep up. To most people, it would have looked meaningless, just the restless thoughts of an artist caught between ideas, but the team wasn't buying that. They knew Tupac too well to believe anything he wrote was random. This was a man who built his entire image with precision. Every lyric, every interview, every move he made in public, nothing was left to chance. So why would his private notes be any different? The researchers began digging deeper, not just reading the words, but studying how he wrote them. That's when they started noticing the real pattern. Certain phrases popped up again and again, scattered across different notebooks, written months or even years apart, but always the same spacing, always underlined or circled in the same way. It was like he was sending a message to the future, one only visible to those patient enough to look twice. Some words were written in bold capital letters, others quietly in lowercase, yet the repetition was too exact to ignore. Every underline, every circle, every symbol carried intent, like a secret rhythm running beneath the ink. The chaos wasn't chaos, it was choreography. Tupac had been leaving behind a blueprint the whole time, hidden it in the only place no one ever thought to look, inside his own handwriting.
Tupac was still in that mode.
Hey. When Tyson get in the ring, he not motherfucker. Well, that's what Tupac gonna do. Everybody that go to jail come out, they got good luck.
That's very addictive.
When niggas come against me, I'ma knock they punk ass out.
If he didn't have anybody to fight, he'll find somebody to fight.
That's when everything changed. The team started noticing the repetitions. Tupac would write the same word over and over again, sometimes 10 times, sometimes 20, and never by accident. Those repeated words always appeared near specific names, dates, or strange symbols, like he was marking something important, something only he could recognize. Even the lines he crossed out weren't mistakes, they were part of the message. When the researchers compared notebooks side by side, they realized something wild. What Tupac crossed out was just as meaningful as what he left visible. The scratches, the erasures, the messy marks, they formed patterns that linked pages together like threads in a web. Beneath the surface, Tupac was crafting hidden layers, shaping his thoughts like riddles for the future. He wasn't just writing for his time, he was writing for ours. He knew one day people would dig through his words, searching for meaning, so he built his messages like puzzles, stacked in layers, waiting for someone patient enough to decode them. And when the patterns finally began to reveal themselves, they exposed something no fan had ever imagined. Tupac had created his own secret code. But this wasn't some classic cipher with keys or symbols you could plug into a machine. No, his code lived in the details, in the spacing between words, the rhythm of repetition, and the strange ways certain phrases echoed across notebooks like ghosts. His handwriting became a map of meaning, and you could only understand it if you looked beyond the obvious. The team began with the symbols, small marks scattered through the notebooks. Some looked like stars, others like crosses, circles with slashes through them, and a few resembled letters from alphabets no one had ever seen before. At first, they assumed these were just doodles, random sketches from long studio nights or moments of boredom. But then, something clicked. Those marks always appeared near specific types of content. A star often sat beside a person's name, a circle appeared next to a date, and a cross line would show up near a location. Once they saw the pattern, everything shifted into focus. The symbols weren't decoration, they were tags, a secret labeling system Tupac used to track people, places, and events without ever writing them out directly. As the team mapped these symbols across hundreds of pages, full networks started to form. Hidden connections between names, timelines, and locations came alive, like Tupac had been building his own coded database of real-life events. And that wasn't all. The spacing between lines was another key. Blank gaps, uneven margins, and indents weren't random. They guided the eye, breaking the code into sections. Every space, every underline, every repetition was deliberate. Tupac wasn't just writing music or poetry, he was designing an encrypted story that would take decades to uncover. Tupac's writing had patterns hiding in plain sight, and the deeper the team looked, the stranger it got. He would leave odd gaps between words, sometimes 3 or 4 spaces where there should have been only 1. At first, it looked like sloppy handwriting, but once they started measuring those spaces, a chilling consistency appeared. Every 3-space gap showed up before the names of people he didn't trust. Single spaces were used for neutral thoughts, and when words were jammed together, no space at all, that was his sign of urgency or danger. Tupac wasn't just writing, he was encoding emotion straight into his spacing. Then came the repetitions, the mind-blowing part of his code. When he repeated a word multiple times, it wasn't for emphasis, it was a system. 3 repetitions meant be careful. 5 meant something was confirmed. 7 or more, that was critical, a red alert. The team tested this theory across notebook after notebook, and it checked out every single time. What once looked random suddenly became structured warnings hidden behind everyday handwriting.
What was your last memory with Pac?
And Pac came to your fight.
Yes.
Oh, shit.
Mhm.
He was really happy after. We just talked about this shit. And then went home, and then he left.
What did Pac mean to Mike Tyson?
Man, it was just, it's very difficult to talk about. It was just a young kid that really wanted to be great. And that happened.
Once the researchers cracked that layer, everything changed. These weren't just loose thoughts or creative rants. These were warnings. Every page took on new meaning. Every underline pointed toward a person or event. and every repetition shouted danger long before anyone else noticed. What looked like chaos had been a disguise all along, a way to hide the truth right in front of everyone's eyes. When the system finally made sense, the tone of Tupac's writing shifted completely. The decoded pages revealed fear, suspicion, and awareness of danger, stuff the public had never seen. Once the team understood the structure, they couldn't look away. These weren't vague feelings or moments of stress. They were sharp, specific observations, records of betrayal, pressure, and threats that he carefully tracked over time. Lines that once seemed disconnected suddenly snapped into focus, as if Tupac had been documenting his own premonitions. Repeated phrases like "watch the ones closest" appeared across different notebooks, sometimes separated by 3 spaces before certain initials, sometimes paired with strange symbols that marked specific dates. Every mark had meaning. Every pattern led somewhere deeper. The team uncovered pages where Tupac described feeling watched, followed, surrounded by unseen eyes. He wrote about meetings that felt off, people who spoke in half-truths, and phone calls that came late at night when the city was quiet. He mentioned conversations that went from friendly to suspicious too fast, people asking too much about his movements, his travel plans, his next steps. But here's what made it even more haunting. These weren't ramblings of paranoia. There was a calm precision to his writing, as if he knew what was happening and wanted to leave a record in case he couldn't say it out loud. His words read less like diary entries and more like coded reports, and personal archive of warnings he knew might one day need to be found. The more the team decoded, the clearer it became Tupac wasn't just writing for himself. He was leaving a trail, a silent message meant to survive beyond him. And once his system was finally unlocked, every page started to tell the same chilling truth. Tupac had seen the storm coming long before the world ever knew it was on the way. These weren't emotional outbursts. They were clinical observations, written with the sharp precision of someone collecting evidence. And the timing of it all mattered. Most of Tupac's most chilling warnings appeared during the last 2 years of his life, tightly clustered around major events that would later prove to be turning points. In one notebook from early 1996, he kept writing about changes coming, repeating the phrase 5 times every time it appeared, a direct sign of confirmation in his code. Another set of pages from that summer painted a darker picture, notes about pressure from all sides, surrounded by strange symbols that the team could now link to specific names, cities, and even organizations. It wasn't random, it was deliberate. Some entries hit even harder. Though still coded, Tupac wrote about people who smiled in his face but plotted behind his back, about business deals that felt like traps and situations that boxed him into corners. No good choices, only setups. He never dropped full names, but the initials, spacing, and coded symbols left no doubt about who he meant. And what shook the team the most? Many of those names weren't the obvious ones fans had always suspected. These weren't rivals or enemies from the headlines. These were people who had been close, the ones seen laughing with him in photos, standing beside him at events, giving emotional interviews after his death. But next to their initials in his notebooks, Tupac left warnings marked with 7 or more repetitions, his code for critical danger. Those notes screamed that he knew exactly who to fear and that the real threats were hiding in plain sight.
And the whole crew, man, like, you know, there was the, you know, Tupac dissed me on, well, he didn't diss me. I think one of the Outlaws, he was like, he called out whoever did Paparazzi, because they thought Paparazzi, I wrote Paparazzi about Tupac.
Really?
Like the when he had the How Do You Want It song. All I want is the money and the fame.
Right.
And then in my song I said, it's a shame niggas in the rap game only for the money and the fame.
The decoded pages revealed a man under constant pressure, not paranoid, but aware. He wasn't imagining threats, he was tracking them. Every note, every symbol, every pattern was his way of documenting what he couldn't say out loud. He was building a record for the future, a hidden testimony written between the lines. Inside those notebooks, Tupac had created something incredible, a personal map of danger. His clues were scattered like breadcrumbs, waiting for someone to finally connect them. Every symbol linked to a name, every repeated phrase tied to a specific event, and every gap in spacing pointed toward a moment that mattered. It was like watching him chart his own story in real time, one piece of the puzzle at a time. The initials stood out the most once the team knew how to spot them. They weren't in big, bold letters. They were tucked away, quietly sitting in the margins or hidden between unrelated sentences, like secrets hiding in plain sight. Sometimes, a single letter sat alone at the bottom of a page, small, almost invisible, but paired with the spacing, the underlines, or the repetition pattern, it spoke volumes. Tupac had created his own private language, a code of protection, a warning system, and a map of connections that only made sense once all the fragments came together. And when the team finally traced those clues, what they uncovered painted a haunting picture. Tupac wasn't running from shadows. He was documenting the truth about the world closing in on him. Sometimes Tupac circled the initials, other times he underlined them, and every now and then, the same set of letters would pop up multiple times on a single page, each marked with different symbols, like a shifting story told in code. The research team started cataloging every instance they could find, cross-referencing each one with real people from Tupac's life: friends, business partners, rivals, label executives, and industry power players. But what they discovered was disturbing. Some initials appeared beside stars, symbols the team had already decoded as marks of trust or significance. But then those very same initials would show up again later, this time next to cross circles, the symbol for warning or betrayal. It was as if Tupac had been tracking his relationships in real time, mapping the exact moments when loyalty flipped and trust turned into danger. He wasn't just venting, he was documenting. Every name, every symbol told a story of shifting alliances and hidden motives. The way he coded places was even more mysterious. Instead of writing names outright, Tupac used combinations of single letters and numbers, clues that secretly stood for dates, addresses, or cities. One page from late 1995 had LV written 7 times, each surrounded by the symbol for danger. When the team decoded it, their hearts dropped. He'd been referencing Las Vegas, months before that fateful night that changed everything. Other cities showed up with similar markings, locations tied to major turning points in his life, studios where huge business decisions went down, hotels where private, tense meetings took place, airports and neighborhoods connected to key figures. Tupac wasn't guessing. He was building a secret map of his own life, marking the pressure points no one else could see.
All these weak rappers, Nas, all these suckers, they battling off of East and West like this is a game. This ain't no game. If this was chess, we'd be yelling checkmate 3 years ago, because we've been beat these. It's not a game.
Then came the events, situations that seemed minor at the time. Routine label meetings, contract talks, or album planning sessions. But once decoded, they took on a whole new meaning. Tupac documented every detail with surgical precision: who was in the room, who talked, who stayed quiet, and who kept watching him instead of the speaker. He was noticing everything, and the more pressure he felt, the more detailed his notes became. Certain words kept repeating, and those turned out to be the biggest clues of all. Words like contract, loyalty, and exit appeared again and again, each with a repetition count that revealed its level of importance. When contract showed up 5 times, it meant the deal was confirmed. But if it appeared crossed out or paired with warning symbols, it meant the deal was dangerous. The pattern was too clean to be coincidence. It was a system, a hidden structure that tied people, places, and events into one massive timeline. Only when the team finally connected all those threads did the real message start to reveal itself. Tupac hadn't been rambling, he'd been documenting history as it happened. His notes were the private record of shifting power, betrayal, and trust, written by a man who knew his every move was being watched and wanted to make sure the truth wouldn't disappear with him. What the team uncovered was staggering. A carefully documented record of everything Tupac saw, suspected, and lived through during those final years. It wasn't paranoia, it was protection. His silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. Tupac never spoke these truths publicly, not because he was scared, but because he knew the world wasn't ready to hear them, and speaking too soon could have cost him everything. To the public, Tupac was fearless, a loud, unshakable voice who called out injustice and never hesitated to name names. He was bold, confrontational, and unapologetic. But behind the stage lights, the private Tupac was strategic. He understood timing, leverage, and the danger of exposing too much too early. His notebooks revealed that double life clearly, pages where he wrote full accusations in detail, only to strike them completely, as if telling himself, not yet. There were moments where his words burned with frustration, entries where he wrote about being tired of pretending, tired of watching people move in the shadows while he stayed silent. He talked about wanting to expose everything, to drag secrets into the light no matter the fallout. You could see the anger in the handwriting itself, letters pressed harder into the paper, words growing larger, darker, heavier, sentences ending with long trails of exclamation points and question marks, like he was demanding answers from the universe itself. But then, on the very next page, his tone would shift completely. He'd remind himself to stay calm, to be patient, to wait for the right time. He wrote about strategy, about protecting the people he cared for by holding back until he had proof, undeniable proof. He understood how the game worked. Speaking too soon would get him dismissed, attacked, or worse. Tupac knew that powerful people had ways of silencing anyone who stepped too close to the truth, so he built a system of defense, silence as survival. The more the team read, the more they realized how methodical he'd been. He wasn't just venting, he was documenting. Every page was a breadcrumb, a trace of what he'd witnessed and who was involved. His handwriting carried intent. The notes weren't random musings, they were evidence in disguise.
Let's get into that. How did you guys originally meet?
I met him, I keep saying a Waffle House, but that's a Southern thing. I met him at a pancake house in San Francisco when my brother and I went up there to do a digital underground, basically. A digital underground video was, Money B had a group called Raw Fusion. And Tupac wasn't famous yet, and I didn't know he had just signed a record deal. And Juice was in the can, but he still wasn't famous. And it was clear, and this kid at the end of the table was the most charismatic, the funniest. He just was, I was drawn to him immediately. And then when we had a private moment, he said, I just signed a record deal and I want you guys to do my first music videos.
He wrote as if he knew these pages might one day have to speak for him. Each one felt like an insurance policy, his way of saying, if I can't tell my story, the pages will. That thought hit hard. It was as though Tupac was preparing for the possibility that his voice might be cut off, but his truth would still find a way to survive. His writing showed the duality of a man who lived under pressure, publicly fiery, privately cautious. He balanced the role of the rebel with that of a strategist, choosing when to roar and when to whisper. The frustration, the restraint, the coded warnings, they all painted the picture of someone who knew too much and was buying time to protect what he'd built. Every crossed out line had a purpose. Every repetition, every symbol, every pause in his handwriting hinted at awareness far deeper than the world ever gave him credit for. He wasn't scared, he was planning. By the end of those decoded notes, one truth was impossible to ignore. Tupac had been building a record that would outlive him. Each notebook, each hidden message was part of his safeguard against being erased or rewritten. His silence wasn't the absence of truth, it was the preparation for a truth too powerful to be spoken out loud. Among Tupac's notes were entries that sent chills through the research team, pages where he mentioned specific dates in the future, dates tied to plans, confessions, and big moves he intended to make. He wrote about moments when he would finally speak out, when certain truths would be revealed, and when the world would see what he'd been holding back. But many of those dates never came. He was gone before he could reach them. Reading those pages felt haunting, like seeing plans trapped in time, strategies that would never be tested, truths that stayed locked inside his notebooks forever. And now that future, the one Tupac was writing toward, has finally arrived. But the question is, are we ready for what he left behind? The silence that once protected him no longer matters, and every word he held back is still here, waiting for the world to finally catch up to what he already knew. When the first parts of his decoded notes leaked online, chaos erupted instantly. Fans went wild. Within hours, screenshots were flying across social media, hashtags started trending, and forums that had debated his legacy for decades lit up with new energy. People who had grown up idolizing Tupac suddenly had new words straight from him, raw, detailed, and unsettling. At first, disbelief dominated the conversation. The notes seemed too real, too intricate, too aware to possibly be authentic. Some fans thought it was a hoax, another internet stunt, or a clever way to spark controversy and cash in on old conspiracies. But as more pages surfaced and experts confirmed that the handwriting matched Tupac's verified samples, the doubts started to crack. What began as curiosity turned into obsession. Fans who had long accepted the official story of Tupac's death, who had made peace with it, who had moved on, suddenly found themselves pulled right back in. The more they read, the harder it became to ignore the implications. If these notes were real, and Tupac truly documented threats, betrayals, and pressure this precisely, then what did that say about the people around him, about the music industry he was fighting within, about the truth behind his final days?
What's up next for you after this project? forward, up, faster, bigger, taller. I got things that's in front of me, but I won't know till I step in it.
Those questions hit hard and they spread fast. Within days, online communities started forming, groups dedicated entirely to decoding the remaining pages. People began building massive spreadsheets of symbols, initials, and repetition counts. They compared handwriting patterns, matched references to real events, and argued for hours over what each mark might mean. Fans became detectives, scanning every inch of every leaked image for hidden clues, trying to piece together the story Tupac never got to finish. Some spent entire nights analyzing single pages, zooming in on photos, circling details, marking spacing, debating repetition counts, and fighting over interpretations like it was a digital courtroom. New theories rose and fell by the hour. Was Tupac warning about people in his circle? Was he planning to expose something bigger? Every line sparked a new question, and every discovery only made the mystery deeper. What started as fascination grew into obsession. The decoded words weren't just history, they felt alive, pulling people into the mind of a man who saw danger coming and tried to document it before it was too late. For many, the notes shattered everything they thought they knew. The tragedy of Tupac's death suddenly looked different, less like fate and more like a plan unfolding in real time, one he had already seen coming. And as the leaks continued, one thing became painfully clear. Tupac's silence was never the end of the story. It was only the beginning of the message he left behind, waiting for the world to finally understand. The atmosphere around Tupac's decoded notes quickly turned explosive. Not everyone wanted to believe what those pages were saying. Some fans argued the notes were being twisted, that Tupac had simply been venting in private, expressing frustration like any artist, never intending for those thoughts to become public. But others fired back, saying that brushing off his words was an act of disrespect. They believed he left those pages behind for a reason, and ignoring them meant denying his truth. The debate split the fan base wide open. Suddenly, everyone was forced to confront a new version of Tupac, one that didn't fit the myth. The man in these notes wasn't just the fearless, fiery rebel the world had come to idolize. He was cautious, strategic, and deeply aware of the danger surrounding him. It flipped everything fans thought they knew about him. He wasn't only bold, he was calculated, not just outspoken, but deliberate. He wasn't just speaking truth to power, he was trying to survive it. With that realization, everything about his final years began to feel different. Every interview started to sound like a hidden warning. Every lyric suddenly felt like a clue. Each word in his notebooks carried new weight, evidence of a man who saw betrayal, pressure, and danger long before the world ever caught on. The research team decided to dig even deeper, lining up the private notes against the public timeline. They cross-referenced every detail, concert schedules, studio sessions, interview dates, and legal filings, and what they found was impossible to ignore. The coded notes matched perfectly with real-life events. It wasn't random, it was deliberate documentation. Entries from 1995 showed Tupac quietly noting shifts in his business relationships. He wrote about people suddenly going silent, meetings being postponed without reason, and contracts coming back with suspicious new clauses. It was like he could feel the setup coming. These weren't vague thoughts, they matched the same period when he was fighting through label conflicts and financial disputes that fans only learned about later. Behind his confident public image, the pressure was building fast. While the cameras captured a man full of energy and defiance, his notebooks revealed the cracks, how he was watching every move, measuring every conversation, and noticing who had started acting differently. The team began realizing that the sudden explosions of conflict the world saw weren't sudden at all. They were the breaking point of months of manipulation that Tupac had already been tracking. Then came the summer of 1996, the most haunting section of all. Those pages were dense, almost frantic, covered with overlapping symbols, underlined initials, and repeated warnings that something big, something major was closing in. The handwriting got heavier, darker, more pressed into the paper, as if the tension itself was bleeding through the ink.
And then I started to see him get on more digital records, and I was like, okay, Pac is starting to, move up from just being, in the background to actually, doing some songs. I just remember him being a fun dude with a lot of energy. You know, he would wake you up in the middle of the night when you was sleeping shit. Like, party over, Pac, you know, we did the show, nigga, it's 4. About 4 in the morning now, you know, it's like we got a show tomorrow somewhere, like, time to go to sleep.
The researchers could see the pattern forming, each entry growing more urgent, the codes more intense. Tupac wasn't guessing, he was watching something unfold in real time. His private words lined up with his public life perfectly. Concerts, headlines, interviews, everything. And for fans reading these decoded pages decades later, it hit like a shockwave. The legend they thought they knew, the fearless warrior who spoke truth no matter the cost, was even more complex than they'd imagined. He knew what was happening, and he was preparing for it, tracking it, recording it, one coded warning at a time. The Tupac in those pages wasn't just living history, he was writing it, piece by piece, as it happened. Tupac's final pages were more than notes. They were maps of a man surrounded by pressure. His handwriting was packed with references to travel plans, security worries, and names of people he needed to avoid. The deeper the team looked, the clearer it became. He was tracking threats coming from multiple directions at once. Every danger had its own category, its own level of urgency, and he documented exactly how those risks evolved over time. He wrote about being pushed to attend certain events he didn't want to go to, about advice that didn't feel genuine, and about choices that never felt like his own. There were people claiming to protect him while quietly controlling his movements, and Tupac saw right through it. The most haunting detail wasn't just what he wrote, it was when. In one notebook from late August 1996, he mentioned dangerous weeks ahead, marked with 7 repetitions, his code for critical importance. The spacing and symbols surrounding those words looked like someone who had tried to prevent something, but had finally accepted it as inevitable. Then came an entry from early September, a list of cities with small cryptic symbols beside each one. Las Vegas was circled again and again, crossed with the same warning mark Tupac used throughout his notes to signal serious danger. It was as if he knew the clock was running out. When researchers compared those pages with his final interviews, everything clicked. Statements that once sounded like vague philosophy, lines about trust, loyalty, and staying aware, took on an entirely new meaning. They weren't random reflections, they were coded messages to anyone who knew how to listen. Tupac wasn't venting, he was communicating. He was warning in plain sight, disguising truth as wisdom. The notes showed a man who wasn't reckless or caught off guard, but one who saw the storm coming and made every move with intention. Every decision he made in those last months carried weight, like he knew each choice could be his last. These entries offered a chilling glimpse into the mind of someone preparing for an ending that the rest of the world couldn't see coming. The timeline was impossible to ignore. The deeper the team read, the heavier the reality hit. Tupac knew exactly what he was walking into. And the tragic part? The world had no idea.
Everybody's getting pimped. Whether you work a 9 to 5 or whether you work for yourself, you're getting pimped by somebody. That's not the crime. The crime is how long you allow yourself to get pimped. You have to come up. Everything is a come up. Everything is a struggle. You start from the bottom, working to the top.
These notes don't give simple answers. They don't solve the mystery or reveal one clear villain. What they offer instead is something even more powerful, a window into the mind of a man who knew he was in danger, who saw betrayal forming around him, and who chose to document it all rather than scream it out loud. He wasn't just an artist, he was an observer, an investigator, a strategist building a quiet record that could speak for him if he no longer could. Every word he left behind shows why Tupac's story has never been simple. While the cameras captured a bold, untouchable figure, his private writings reveal someone walking a razor's edge, carefully watching, calculating, surviving. He was living 2 lives at once, the public icon, the unstoppable voice of truth, and the private strategist, quietly tracking threats and piecing together a case that only the future could understand. The man behind the music wasn't reckless, he was methodical, brilliant, and always one move ahead. And now that his code has been cracked, the picture is clearer than ever. Tupac didn't just leave behind lyrics, he left layers, a system designed to reveal itself only when the world was finally ready to face it. The decoded notes haven't answered every question, but they've rewritten them all. Fans who once argued simple theories now face a complex, haunting reality, a web of power, betrayal, and survival that makes the headlines of the past look shallow by comparison. The warnings he left point towards truths that some people still don't want to face, connections that don't fit the clean, comfortable narratives we've told for years. the legend we built hides something messier, deeper, and far more human. And one question still echoes louder than ever. What else did Tupac leave behind? Because according to the research team, these notebooks weren't the only place he hid information. They believe there are more layers, hidden codes inside his lyrics, music videos, interviews, and poems. Things the world has looked at thousands of times, but never through this lens. If Tupac went to such lengths to encrypt his private writings, what might he have hidden in the art he knew millions of people would study for generations? How much truth has been sitting in plain sight, woven into beats, rhymes, and performances we thought we understood? The search isn't over, it's just beginning. Every new discovery only raises more questions. Every decoded word pulls fans deeper into the maze Tupac designed, one that's revealing itself piece by piece, exactly how he planned. He couldn't speak it while he was alive. The truth was too heavy, too dangerous, but maybe he always knew this moment would come, that the world would finally be ready to face what he'd been warning about all along. The code has only started to unfold. What's next is up to you. Dive deeper into Tupac's hidden world, explore the decoded notes, and join the movement uncovering the truth he couldn't speak. Follow, share, and stay locked in, because every page, every lyric, every symbol might still be hiding the answers the world's been chasing for decades.
We all know Pac. Very vocal, very outspoken. He wanted to understand why he was being Sharif.